All right, my guest today is Leah Haberman. If you're in the creator economy, you probably already subscribed to her newsletter, know her all about it, like on LinkedIn, through the ICYMI newsletter. The whole industry seems to rely on your newsletter, Leah. What's happening in the industry and where things are moving. But I would love for you to just take a moment and just introduce yourself. I feel like our guests usually do a better job introducing themselves. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up being sort of the person everyone turns to for all of this stuff to make sense.
That's so funny because I hate talking about myself. So I'm actually probably not the best person to introduce myself. But ultimately, I think you described it pretty well. Like, I write the newsletter, I teach at UCLA Extension, I consult for a bunch of brands, mostly in the social and creator marketing space. I don't necessarily consider myself a marketer. I think I am a tech enthusiast. Like, I
Mhm.
love the platforms, the technology, not necessarily the algorithm or some of the decisions or policies, but like
Right.
I just love technology and I love figuring out how it can get you, get your message across, whether you're a brand or a creator, for example. And obviously, right now, like social marketing and creator marketing is probably the place that you're reaching audiences.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, there's so many things happening now in the space. You are at Cannes Lions. I feel like you're at all the major like creator conferences, and so you have your like ear on the ground of what's happening, what's trending, what's coming down the pipes. Probably before a lot of people do. I think you were even at the White House. Was it last year, the year before that? I think, and like speaking to Congress and things on like what's happening there. So, yeah, tell us like, after tracking the space for so many years, like what do you see happening like in the next 6 months, 12 months, a trend that you think is coming down the pipes or vice versa that maybe trends that are kind of flopping around?
Okay, that's a huge
It's a big
question.
question, yeah.
Let's start with the flop. I think not flop, but like, look, we as an industry, using the word authentic got
Mhm.
completely overused. I think the new thing that's getting overused is saying follower count doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Um, it matters less. Like, you still need some followers because followers are essentially a sign that your content and your stories are resonating with people. So generally, like, yeah, you do need some followers. You just don't need as many as you previously needed.
Mm.
But I don't know that that doesn't sound super sexy. So I think it's easier to just be like, followers are dead, or like, you don't need followers. I'm trying to think of like the things that are working.
Yep.
Um, I think, oh gosh, there's so many different directions this would go in, but I definitely think that like the idea of like the super user, the power user, the super fan,
Mhm.
um, serving those people, I think is going to work really well. I'm actually working on a new newsletter talking about how the platforms are very much focusing on like the power user, the super fan. And I think whenever the platforms do something, that ends up trickling out to the rest of us.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's kind of in line with how we're seeing like there's no monoculture, there's no one perfect platform to reach everybody. So I think the idea of like smaller spaces, but spaces filled with people who are really invested in you as a creator or you as a brand, for example, I think that's going to play a really big role. Um, and I think also the offline of it all, right,
Mm.
is
Yeah.
like people care a lot about offline. And again, it's a little bit like the follower count is dead declaration. It's not like everyone's going to go offline and like nobody will be online anymore. Like,
Yeah.
it's there's never any absolute. It's always kind of a balance. And so I think what we're seeing a lot of is people are announcing that they're going offline. They
Mhm.
go offline, then they get back online and they recap or catalog everything they did while they were offline.
Mm.
Um so I think that we're still going to see this blend of like it's cool to say you're going offline, but I think that there's going to be an online component to it where you talk about hobbies, you talk about what you're doing offline, you go offline, then you come back and you share photos or videos or of whatever it is that you were doing offline. So I think like from the thinking about it from the professional perspective, I do think that brands and creators can connect with people as long as they're supporting this idea of you're not going to be online all the time. You probably are going to be going offline. Let us talk about offline activities. Let us sell you things that you can buy to do during your offline time. Let us give you lists of places to go and things to do. And then, I think just from the perspective of like a creator, for example, like post about what you're doing offline and what you're, during your analog hours.
Yeah.
So I think people will still be reachable. It's just maybe a little less so than they have been.
I like that. Yeah, those are, I mean, there's, like you said, there's so many different directions. I feel like I want to ask you everything that you just, I want to dive deep into all the things he said. But let's start with like what you said there, like follower, the follower, like the view count or like the follower count is not so as important. And I guess that like leads into like what you said about smaller spaces where people are looking for like more smaller spaces, I suppose, which leads into the offline. I feel like that's kind of like a, I hate the word funnel, but like that's kind of a funnel, like YouTube, followers, small spaces, maybe paywall stuff, and then you get invited to the offline events or something, or like, that sort of thing. It,
Hosting, yeah.
yeah, is that kind of what you're thinking there? And like what is that sort of like what's transforming as a creator as they mature out of being popular, like and building a business?
I mean, for sure, if you're a creator, you've got to think about like, if you're a creator, you need an exit strategy.
Yes.
So you need to
Mhm.
be thinking about like, what am I building alongside this content business
Mhm.
that I'm going to be able to use at some point to kind of like transition from just being a media company that's publishing all this content to like a media company that's funneling my audience to something else that I'm selling, whether it's like a product or a service or whatever it is. Like you need a backup. I've talked about this before, I feel like, but like there are very few creators who manage to make it a lifetime career. I mean, I don't even
Mm,
think it's been around long enough necessarily to like gauge whether or not anybody can make it a lifetime career. But like, there are a handful of names. Like thinking about the OG people, I'm like maybe Casey Neistat, probably Mr. Beast.
yeah.
There'll be a handful of people, Marquise Brownlee, who will be able to go through like each different iteration of social media and like internet customs habits and cultures, but for the most part like it doesn't last forever for everybody, so you should always have that kind of side, that plan B or whatever it is that you're going to segue over into.
Yeah.
um I think that that's even more relevant now. Some data just came out recently about how people are spending less time on social media.
Mm,
They're not completely leaving social media, but they are spending less time. I think that there's a lot of people who are also posting about granny hobbies, like slow culture, all of these things. So it just, I think, both from like a tech and time spent perspective, they're spending less time. And then from like a cultural perspective, people are excited or like people feel really enthusiastic in talking about their time offline. Um, and so I think like it is worth getting into that, like whether you're a brand or a creator, of like, yeah, people are really excited to spend time offline. Like, how do I fit into that? Like you said, am I hosting an event? I think creators hosting events, amazing idea. I went to an event this week hosted by Michaela Nagera,
mhm.
who is a really famous makeup artist on TikTok. I mean, she's on every platform now, but she
Nice.
started as the TikToker,
Mm.
and she has her own beauty brand. She threw an event that is probably one of the best events that I went to this year, second only to Colin and Samir's published press summit that was earlier this year. And it's like creators understand how to get people together. They understand what people are looking for in an experience. They understand how to talk to them. So I think creator events tend to be some of the best conferences or events that you can go to. And like I said, it fits in with this whole narrative of like, we want to spend more time offline. Like, how can you get us offline? How can you accompany us in our journey? Like, as a
Mm,
consumer, like, how do you fit into my offline plans?
yeah.
And you're either telling me how to spend time, you're spending time with me, you're cataloging your own time offline. So I think it's like really as like, again, I keep saying like brands and creators, but ultimately they need audiences. And so like where are audiences? Audiences are going offline. That's where you got to go. That's what you got to care about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're speaking all the things. Like I do see a lot of events now, a lot of creator events, a lot of like creator led events, or even brands. Leah, I'm finding brands are sort of like taking a step back, it's still their event, but it's like there's a creator that's headlining or like co-hosting it with them, which is a really interesting, like just the dynamic of that. It used to be like you have to be invited as a creator. Now it's like you are the event as a creator, so it's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. I actually did that last year. I hosted an event, co-hosted with Sprout Social,
Yep.
and they weren't able to be at South by, so they were like, we're giving you like the talking points that you're going to talk about at the event, and we're
Yeah.
giving you some Sprout Social branded stuff, and
Hmm.
like a, I don't know, like it was a poster or something like that. But it was like I produced the event, like I found the venue, I created the guest list, and that's like a big part of it is being able to tap into a creators network. Like creators should be involved in the planning of an event, like tap into that creators,
Yes.
network to be able to like create the guest list. I welcomed the people there. I gave the little speech, like it was completely I would say like a very joint collaboration, as opposed to, like you were saying, it used to be creators were just invited as VIP guests,
Hmm.
and then they'd get trotted out at some point during the night, and everybody would be like, "Oh, look at this creator." But now it's like, no, you're getting them involved literally from the like, where should we host this and who should we invite?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can. So it's happening everywhere. It seemed like creators were all over the palais, and they were just like interviewing creator. I mean, there was like even JT Barnett was doing the thing with Stan, and I mean, there's so many, like all of the brands that were doing activations had a creator sort of like they were matched up with, and it was like it was interesting to see. I'm excited to see what happens next year, to be honest, but it just seems to be going that direction. I want to ask you about like you wrote something, or like there's sort of this theme that I catch where you're saying like creators are moving into making like things from like videos to like actually making shows. So creators are making shows, which I do see, but I'd love for you to expand on that. Like, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah. I think I can't tell where this originated
Mm,
first, but I will tell you why it works.
yeah.
For creators, it's a more sustainable format. If you create a show, it gives you kind of a framework around which to plan your content.
Mm,
Very similar to like your niche, your pillars, but this is having repeating elements. You're relying on like the old standards of TV, soap operas, game shows, reality TV, all of those things where you had characters, you had recurring music,
mhm,
recurring visuals. So it works from a creator perspective because if you can hit on a good series idea,
mhm,
um, it makes it easier to keep creating content around that as opposed to starting from scratch every time.
yeah.
Um, I think the brands understand the value of series. you know Brands are not always that innovative, so it's like if you can point to something that's a format they understand, like TV ads, movie previews, like here's how you can slot yourself into this scenario. I think the more easy that you can make it for brands to see where they fit in this ecosystem, the
Yes.
more they're going to be on board. So I think
Mhm,
from the brand perspective, brands are like, okay, good, we understand this. Like the concept of a series is like, we get it, we're on board. Like this is like TV and the things that we're used to. And then platforms, I think they see brands eager to spend money. They see creators who are looking for sustainable formats. And so the platforms started building out the infrastructure, like YouTube with like episodes and shows and playlists or like series lists.
yeah.
So the platform started to build the framework for this to happen. So I think, yeah, like I think everybody's on board. I also think it's all part of the like we're less social media now and we're
Mm,
more heading towards media where like
mhm,
everybody wants to be entertained online. So I think like what's more entertaining than a series, whether it's fictional. Um, there was I'm trying to think of like the girl that did it was like a drama. She played 7 different parts. It was a guy cheating on his girlfriend.
mm,
It was very funny. Or it's like the Risa Tisa like documentary style. And then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. And you're just like
yeah.
following the breadcrumbs along because it's a great story.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much of that happening. Um, how does this like lead into what I'm hearing a lot lately, Leah, is like micro dramas. And so how do you see that sort of like playing with each other? And I am seeing I can't remember the examples, but like there's some brands where they have their own micro dramas now. And then like as commercials, like there's integrations, but it's like micro dramas on reels and shorts. Um and it's just like it's like you're like locked in, you know? There's like a story, there's a plot, there's like cliffhangers, but then there's a brand that's like being supported by it.
I think the idea of I would say it probably came from YouTube first and
Yeah.
the whole idea of shows, like these long form shows. YouTube kept pushing like we want to be the living room viewing experience, or like we want to be the living room app, like essentially when you're sitting there watching your smart TV, you're watching YouTube not just on mobile or your iPad or whatever tablet, but you're also watching on your TV screen. And I think as YouTube is and like there's different ways of framing it, but it's like the number one, I think it's like the most watched app by Gen Z. Some superlative that like YouTube's a really big deal, and like it isn't going to be the new TV. Like YouTube is essentially the new TV. And so I think, you know, TikTok and Instagram saw that. TikTok looked to in Asia, there's a whole tradition of micro dramas. So like this was already very familiar. So I kind of feel like YouTube led the charge. TikTok followed right up after that. And then Instagram, kind of came along and looked what these other two players are doing. And essentially they said, like, this year was the first year they said, okay, we want to support vertical short form micro series.
Yes.
And so they're actually testing their series feature right now. It's not available to everybody, but it's something they're testing. And
Hmm.
again, I think it's just kind of a trickle down effect of like the idea of shows of being more sustainable for creators, of audiences, like you said,
Hmm.
we are locked in. We are like glued to the screen.
Hmm.
Um, if it like Love Island USA, like we want those recurring series with the characters we love and like the stuff we're familiar with. There
Yeah.
is an amazing, I think like an underappreciated kind of strength in like familiar stuff, comfort stuff. Like
Mm.
people like rewatching shows.
Yeah.
People, they rewatched The Office during COVID, for example. It was like people love a comfort watch, and so whether it's like rewatching an old show or getting familiar with a new show, but like getting those constant updates, like that constant dopamine hit of like an ongoing story,
Yeah.
people love that. Brands know how to advertise against it. Um, and the platforms love it because it gets people engaged. It gets you to come back to the app, spend more time on the app. So, like, I think, that's also how, when I'm evaluating, like, is this new feature or this new app going to work? It's like I'm looking at the entire ecosystem of, like, creator, audience, brand, platform. Like, is it going to be beneficial for everyone in this ecosystem or the more majority of people? And I think the idea of series and shows is beneficial for everybody in the ecosystem. And like, that's why I think it's got legs and it's going to last.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think so too. I'm I'm curious to see like where, like you said, it originated in Asia. And I'm kind of watching, I am seeing like these, like WWE, I think launched their own like microdrama app. I think Tim Tebow launched or announced something about like around a faith-based microdrama app. There's like these like very niche microdrama apps happening, whereas I think in Asia it's like a central one. I could be wrong, but I'm wondering what you think of like the adoption of microdramas in like North America and like the western part of the world. Um, yeah, I'm just curious. Like, what's your take on that? Like, what's your observation? Or is it too early to tell?
I mean, it's still early. Obviously, TikTok, for example, is investing the money. They
Hmm.
actually funded their first kind of official micro drama on the app with Issa Rae,
Oh,
and
okay.
they funded her series.
Mm,
It was a collaboration between TikTok and Issa Rae's production company.
mm.
So the fact that the platforms are investing in it, clearly there is like an audience there and money to be made. Um, I think we're still early to the concept. Like I would say even, I mean, Love Island, for example, Big Brother, all of those shows, those also originated in Europe. So I feel like it's like stuff's coming from Asia,
True.
stuff's coming from Europe. And so we might be the home of creators and all of the platforms are here, but it seems like we've been maybe a little bit slow in adopting some of these, like whether it's traditional TV or mobile entertainment formats. But I do think the interest is there. I also think brands are seeing an opportunity a little bit. I think you mentioned this earlier, but like brands having their own app or brands having their own series. That is something I love. I work with a lot of different brands. And so I'm always recommending, like, don't just be the advertiser. And I think that's what like this new landscape is. You're not just the advertiser, you could create your own series.
Yeah.
Crocs did a YouTube Shorts
Mm.
micro drama that was kind of like a little like a romance thing, and they're actually coming out with season 2 soon. um but it's like, yeah, create your own series. We are, in terms of opportunity, it feels a little bit like we're at the dawn of, television and entertainment, when like, for example, like I don't know, Procter and Gamble had soap operas, for example. Like they created the soap opera to be able to sell more of their products to, at the time, housewives who would be watching TV during the middle of the day. So like
Yeah.
create those stories that are around your product or adjacent to your product.
Mhm.
Um, like I don't know, like people at camp, or like, I don't know, buy a like swimming pool. Like if you're a swimming brand, like a bathing suit brand, you're doing something that's like around a pool or an ocean or whatever, like, seaside drama. Like you're creating opportunities for your product to show up more naturally in something that people actually want to watch.
Yeah, it's like I think like consumers are becoming so much more sophisticated. They don't want to be sold to, and it's almost like it's like the ad read is like becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. You're like you're watching this thing. It's like, is this a commercial or is it not a commercial? Is this a show? Like you can't even tell until the maybe the last frame, and it's like the product will show and then like cut. Which is, I
I
mean,
feel like, I don't know. Like, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I feel like we're going, like, it's almost like a K shape, where it's like it either needs to be a super obvious ad where it's like, this is a commercial, buy this thing, go to our restaurant, whatever. Or it has to be like super sophisticated, subtle. It's like complete product immersion placement in something that is more entertainment based.
mhm,
And like there's no middle
there's
ground.
no middle
It's like
ground.
it's got to be one of the two, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which is, I mean, yeah, very interesting to see. Leah, talk to me about platforms. I think there was a something that you had written a little while ago about Instagram sort of becoming the everything app, but I'm curious what your thoughts are now, like sort of an update, like being at Cannes and all of these events lately in the last, few months. What are you seeing? Where should creators be investing their time or brands investing their time and like resources to capture an audience? Like, if they can't be everywhere, let's say, like,
Right.
what should they be doing? What should they be evaluating? What should they be thinking about?
Okay, so first of all, I want to take back the statement of Instagram is going to be the everything app. And I know I wrote that like a month ago or something, a month and a half ago, but
Changes
I'm
so
like,
quick.
okay, I reserve the right to like change my mind.
Yeah.
I think when I wrote that, I was thinking Instagram wants to be the everything app of every content format. I talked to the VP of product, Tessa Lyons, at Cannes, and she talked about how now it's not going to be just reels, carousels, or images or stories. It's also going to be, they want to support long form. They want to support horizontal. They want to support lives. They want to support podcasts and micro dramas. And they do some of this already, like the lives. She was saying they have a live, but Tessa actually said, like, this, it's not a first class experience. We want to make it so that whatever type of content format you're producing, it has a home on Instagram.
Mm,
Um, so in that sense, yeah, it wants to be an everything app. I think like the true everything app that also has like services, payments, all of those things. I actually think we're moving away from that. In the past couple of weeks, for example, like Meta has rolled out something called Seller, which is like a Facebook marketplace app. And then it
oh,
rolled out a Facebook group app called Forum.
oh,
Um, and so I know, so I started counting, and I got to like between Meta, TikTok, and YouTube, I got to 30 different apps in that ecosystem that is like all of these, like maybe it's a utility app where like a CapCut or an edits, or it's a like, I don't know, Lemonade, Threads, like all of these kind of adjacent apps that are satellite to like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, for example.
mhm,
Um, it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's like a disconnect there between inside Instagram, they want to be everything to everybody.
Mhm.
Like, you have a podcast, they want to host your podcast. They don't want you putting a clip of your podcast on there and pushing people off to YouTube or Spotify or whatever. Instagram wants to be the destination that hosts your podcast. They want to host everything for you.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're seeing a lot of the other platforms create more of these like mini experiences, like I was saying, for like to strengthen communities for the super fans, the power users. Um, so it's a little bit at odds with like what we're seeing elsewhere. And I'm not sure, like, at what point does Instagram just get so cluttered? Like, where is anything else going to go now? We've got notes, we've got stories, we've got highlights, we've got DMs. I mean, like, there's just so much stuff. Like, I'm not sure how much more you can pack in there. And I don't know, maybe something else also gets spun out of Instagram when they get to a point where they're like, we cannot stuff one more thing inside this app.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of how I feel in terms of like where we're seeing the apps. And I think the apps that is very much in line with like the idea of like smaller, more loyal um, communities in terms of where creators should be showing up or brands. Um, I mean, look, the bulk of influencer marketing dollars get spent on Instagram. So like you're always going to have to be on Instagram.
Mm.
I would say I do think the opportunity around YouTube, um, whether you're becoming like a YouTube creator or you're a brand that is building out a series on YouTube, it is like the early days of television. There is so much opportunity. Um, YouTube kind of it kind of feels like the future of entertainment is being rewritten very much around YouTube and YouTubers right now. And I think the opportunity to get in on that early on is just so incredible. Um, that I do think like YouTube would probably be, I'd say maybe like Instagram and YouTube, um, TikTok third. Obviously, I do have to mention if you're a B2B creator or B2B brand, you'd be thinking maybe it's like LinkedIn and YouTube
Yep.
or LinkedIn and Instagram. So I think it depends on like what your category is. Um, but yeah, like those are the big players depending on like what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, there's so much happening there, and like even YouTube is like becoming sort of the TV now. Like, like they're really taking a run at like owning the TV, which is really interesting. I don't think anybody, I mean, do you think there's anybody else that's gonna like, I don't see any other platforms, any other social platforms that are able to take a run at the TV as like a space, as a surface, for the time being.
For the time being,
For
I
the
think
time being.
Instagram very much has its eyes on what YouTube is doing
Mm,
and is going to try. I think they're going to, do their best effort to try and become a destination for entertainment watching.
mhm.
Like whether they're able to do that, I don't know. The brand DNA is very much like short form photos, sharing between, friends or family or whatever it is. So like are they able to overhaul themselves to the point where instead of watching TV, linear TV, or streaming YouTube, you're streaming Instagram shows?
Right, right,
I mean, we're kind of a long way away from that. It like listen, it's meta. Like
right.
they have a bajillion dollars and a bajillion followers globally. So
Yeah.
like there's it's I wouldn't rule it out, but it's gonna take them a while.
It would, yeah, exactly, exactly. No, this is great. I need to ask, for the folks out there that are creators that are like looking to really build. I mean, you are a great you've got an email news, you got a newsletter, you've got, followers on LinkedIn, and you use Instagram really well. Like when it comes to owning your audience, which is such a hot buzz term these days, and something that we talk about a lot about here at Uscreen. What comes to mind? Like, what should creators be thinking about as they own their audience? They're doing brand deals, but they also want to control their destiny in terms of business. What does owning your audience sort of like come to mind when you hear that for creators?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think an email list is probably one of the like the primary signals of owning your audience
Mhm.
because you're able to reach people via email. There is no algorithm that is, sending your message off into the ethers for never to be seen. So I think like probably starting with email list. Um, if you compare that with any kind of like in real IRL component,
Mm,
um, or meeting place, like a group, a community, some sort of area where you can have like group chats, for example.
Yep.
I think that that reinforces it because you can have an email list, but like if you're not continually sending stuff out, asking questions, engaging with people, like that email list goes cold. So I don't think
Mm.
it's like, oh, I've got an email list, like, all right, I'm done. Like no other work needs to be done. So I think you always have to like keep that warm. um and then I would say potentially like a podcast or video podcast.
Mm.
Generally, like, data shows that that's like one of the most immersive formats where
Yes.
people are really opting in and spending like deep quality time with you.
Mm.
So I think like that probably would be another thing to think about.
Mm. I
And
love
then
that.
you think about, okay, the platforms that I show up on. And I
Right.
do want to say, like with the newsletter, I just got lucky. I love a text based platform or like text based content. It's just what I happen to enjoy. I think my enjoyment of text based content seemed to overlap with the rise in newsletters over the past couple of years. But I think the most important thing is doing stuff that you love.
Mm.
And so, for example, like had it been, a rise in, I don't know, like I didn't jump on the TikTok train. I saw it happening in 2018 and 2019. I was advising creators and I was like, get on TikTok. Like
Right.
it is exploding. This is the platform you want to be on. So I saw it happening. I don't love being on video. I don't love producing video. It's just not my strength. So like I saw that. It passed me by. I didn't take advantage of it. I don't think I could have taken advantage of it. But then when newsletters came around, I was like, all right, this one I
That's
got.
it.
Like,
That's me.
yes, that, yeah, I can do this.
I can do that.
So I think like the most important thing, probably fundamentally, is that like it's a format that you can sustain,
Mm.
um, and that you enjoy. If I wasn't sending out the newsletter, I'd probably be, I don't know, posting on threads every week with all of these updates. I'd probably be posting even more actively, um, I don't know, in like group chats or whatever. Like I would be sharing that information in some capacity.
Mm.
So make sure that it is something that you would enjoy doing with or without an audience, with or
Mm.
without a platform. It's like you're really into this.
I love
Um,
that.
and then you kind of double down with like, okay, I do video, I do newsletters, I do whatever it is, like photography.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Can I just follow up on that newsletter idea? I think a lot of creators would love to do a newsletter. Do you have any advice on how to be consistent with like coming up with the content for the newsletter? Do you have like how do you come up with, because I feel like your newsletter is super consistent and like it's always relevant to the reader. Is there is what's your process there?
Okay, well, I will say, like, some weeks it kills me to get a newsletter out. Like,
Right.
it goes out every Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. And, like, it doesn't matter if I've been to an event the night before or, stuff is happening. Like, that newsletter is going out no matter how
Yeah.
long or short it is. So I think, like, yeah, the consistency is like a huge aspect of it. I would say the newsletter is very similar to, for example, being I think like maybe being a YouTuber or just a creator in general. It's like I would recommend finding a niche or some small area of your life to talk about. There are certain people who, just like vloggers, could talk about anything, um, and people will show up and watch them. But like, I feel like those opportunities are kind of few and far between, and
Yeah.
not everybody is suited to that. Just like throwing everything out there. So I think finding something in your life that like I subscribe to a fashion creator who's like she sends out a list every Tuesday of like the 10 things she bought this week that are worth looking at. And I'm
Mm.
like, perfect. Like that is actually all I want. Like that is enough. I follow her on Instagram and TikTok. So I'm like, if I want to see that content, it's there. But like every Tuesday, that email list comes of like 10 things to look at. And I'm like, perfect. It's short. It's easy for me to get through. Like, love it.
Love that.
So I think it's like finding like some small angle, some small pillar that you want to like pin your newsletter to. And then the other thing that I would say is also like, don't think that sending out a newsletter means sending out an essay. If you
Mm.
are a writer or an essayist and you love writing, like, all right, knock yourself out. But like, if you have limited time, for example, the creator that sends out a list of like her 10 most beloved things each week that she shopped for, that's great. Like it's a very short list. It's got some images, a tiny little intro, but like that's enough.
That's it.
There was another friend who was a founder, and she sent out it was like a word of the week, or like a
Mm,
misunderstood term of the week. Like you could have a newsletter that's like 1 to 2 paragraphs, as long as it's like super dialed in to a particular like topic or problem or solution people are looking for. Like they will read it. It does not need to be an essay. I would say almost it's harder to get essays, to get people to open and read essays now than it was previously, because there's so many newsletters that it's like, if
yeah.
somebody's going to open yours, like, man, that information or that story better deliver. So I would say the shorter, probably the shorter the better at this point.
I like that. That's actually really liberating. I think we see, I mean,
Yes.
personally, I see like Tube Filter and Published Press, and I'm like, oh man, that's like every week. That's a lot. But like, I like what you're saying is just like, it's actually probably simpler than you probably think.
And you also have to think about, like, for published press, for example, like, um, that's like Hannah and Sid are the
Yes,
ones that write that newsletter. There are like two women, and that is their full time job, working on that newsletter all of the time. So it's like, nobody's newsletter is going to look that good, that formatted, be like that rich with information, unless you're turning it into like, this is my full time venture
that's
and I'm
right.
hiring somebody to work with me. Like, it's just not possible. So I think, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with being short. And honestly, now that we're saying like AI slop tends to be like,
Mm,
a lot of long form content tends to be AI slop, like go short, because it's probably a sign that like you wrote it,
yep.
not AI. So I actually think like I'm all for keep it short, like brevity. Don't ramble. I'm rambling right now on your podcast. I realize that. Like,
You're great. No,
but
this
for
is
everybody
good.
else, I'm saying keep it short.
Keep it short. I love it. So yeah, if you're a creator out there, marketer, whatever like, yeah, keep it short. I think that's really good advice. I think that's what some people probably need to hear. This has been really great, Leah. I mean, I want to respect your time. I know you're super busy. You got so much going on. I love to see all the success. But before we wrap up, what's like one takeaway for a creator or marketer or both from this conversation that you want them to take with them as they, get on to the next podcast that they're listening to?
Um, okay, the thing that I would want people to take away is being objective.
Mm,
And let me explain what I mean. It's the way that I mentioned that I analyze and decide what's going to go in the newsletter. I look at what is best for the ecosystem of like creator, brand, audience, and platform.
mm,
I'm not particularly invested or paid by any one of those kind of elements.
mhm.
And so it's like when information comes out, unfortunately, a lot of times what I see is like if Instagram changes something or introduces something new, creators will like, oh, like, but I love doing it this way, or like, oh, I hate this change. Look, especially if you're a full time creator, like it's a business. Um, you just have to keep rolling and kind of pivoting and adjusting, and thinking like, if something seems to be developing, you're like, it's not fair, or, oh, they would never do this because it would really piss creators off. It's like, listen, if it's profitable, Meta or any of the platforms are going to do what is most profitable. And so I think it's like, try and look at it through an objective lens. Like, don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with like you or your art or how talented you are. If you're trying to be a professional creator, it is a business. And so, like, the terms of the business are changing. You just need to change with it, and always look at, like, okay, something just got announced, whether it's a new app or a feature. Like, how does this impact the entire ecosystem of people involved in social media? And you always have to look at the thing that is going to benefit the most parties versus, oh, this is amazing for creators, but if brands can't make money on it and platforms don't see engagement go up, like it's not going to happen. So I think that would be the thing. I would say, like, look at things through an objective lens
Mhm.
versus taking it personally as any kind of reflection on like you or your creative abilities.
That is such great advice, and it's again like creators I find are the most adaptable people. They just roll with the punches, because yeah, a lot of it is out of their control. So,
I mean,
um,
listen, if I'm cheering for any one of those four parties, it's
yes,
definitely the creators, because I
yes,
feel like they're like the underdogs, they're the entrepreneurs, they're the ones that have to pivot the most. So I am absolutely cheering for creators, but like, yes, if anybody can make it happen, it's going to be creators.
Amazing, amazing. Leah, thank you so much for everything that you do for like our industry and just sharing your knowledge all the time and being on top of everything, and your time today. So thank you for joining us. What's the best places for our folks to find you?
Newsletter on Substack, leahhaberman.substack.com, which is ICYMI, or in case you missed it, by Leah Haberman, and then probably LinkedIn.
Amazing, amazing. Leah, thanks so
Thanks
much
so
for
much,
your
Rob.
time. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Okay, thanks.